At first, we started doing email engagement to tell them, hey, like you have this ongoing account, come back and like re-engage and use the product which we were paying. What happened? Churn increased. We were reminding people that they were paying for something, right? What did we do? Well, we tested. What if the people for which the credit card expiry date was further out than the contract renewal date, we actually stopped all product emails, all email communication from the company. What happens? Well, churn goes down. They forget about it because they're already paying for the past 6 months without using it.
Welcome to the Product Tea with Léa. I am your host, Léa Tarin, and we are about to spill the tea with the best from tech about product, growth, and senior leadership topics. Today, we'll talk to someone who had his growth fingers in B2B SaaS startups like G2, Gorgias, Metadata, Mad Kudu, and more. As the VP of Growth at Drift and Segment, he amplified teams from a modest 50 to 300. With over 15 years focused on B2B growth marketing strategies, he's bringing marketing and engineering together in environments that demand tracking and data-driven decision-making. We will be talking with this dual French and American citizen about B2B and how to nurture long conversion cycles, maybe, if this father of two, an ardent cheese aficionado, and a whimsical pastafarian, has time to spill the tea with me. Welcome to the Product Tea, Guillaume Cabane. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, wow. That's an intro. I never see one. I'm doing much better now after this intro. I'm like feeling so energized.
Oh, this is very good. How would you rate this introduction from 1 cheddar cheese to 10 total camembert?
Yeah, this is a very strong cheese introduction.
Okay. If you are not French, then I would take this as an insult, but I think you mean it. So,
cheese is good.
Guillaume, can you introduce yourself to my cheese-loving audience in a couple of sentences in case I missed something?
Yeah, no, I think that you're spot on. I think if you're in marketing, especially in B2B SaaS these days, there is an extremely high chance that you use on a regular basis at least one product where I have been involved in some capacity. Generally, I like to play that game, and I tell people that as soon as you open your computer, a little cent comes into my piggy bank every time. Yeah, every time you open your computer, a little one is ding goes my piggy bank, given the number of companies I've been involved with over the past 15, 20 years. So it's a big number.
So what Guillaume is trying to tell us is that he has some equity in these companies, and that's good. So maybe we can talk about this.
There's some form of benefits one way or another. Just I've been involved in so many companies. I've helped so many founders. I'm passionate about MarTech. I truly am a technologist. By and far, what defines me is my love of technology, throughout the years. For those, that, can see a snippet of this on video, you'll see my background. I think it does show that I love, for sure science fiction, but technology. I am the guy who will be trying new seed stage, Series A stage tools to see what's out there. That's me.
I don't think you can stay longer in this industry for 2 weeks than 2 weeks unless you actually love what's happening in it. It's the same for me. And for those people that are not watching the video on YouTube, Guillaume is sitting in front of a green screen that he can lower on a very, on an Oreo cheese kind of futuristic wall. We're going to make an episode about this in the next time as well. I also want one of those. But before we get started, Guillaume, I have one question that I ask every guest, and that is, what do people get wrong about you once they get to know you?
Yeah. People think I'm a business guy and I'm here for the business and I'm very focused on work because we're in an industry where everybody's focused on work and on working hard and getting big outcomes. And because I've had big outcomes, people do that correlation. That correlation couldn't be more wrong. Quite the opposite, actually. I'm extremely focused on my family and on having a strong work-life balance. And yeah, people get this wrong. People think you'll never be able to stop. And I think that's wrong.
I actually do think, I'm trying to make a case now for parents in general. I don't know whether this is a good point or not, but I think parents in general know what they work for, also on the bad days. A good friend of mine, Adam Fishman, has the Startup Dad podcast. I'm not sure whether actually been one of his guests, but he talks about this a lot. And I think it doesn't mean that parents are better than people without children. I mean, I don't have children, and I think I also love working and stuff, but I'm just saying, I don't think that having a purpose outside of your own identity, and whether you actually love the stuff out of your passion can actually be quite helpful. So I don't think that being a parent is anything negative in this particular industry, because you also have to manage a kindergarten quite often. So,
in my line of work, it makes saying no much easier because I always have a better option than a crappy project.
yeah.
And that is something that I encourage everybody to have, whether that is children or something else, or a hobby, a passion. Like, you need to have something out there that's not work that is better than a random average project. Every project I want to work on has to be like awesome, fantastic. Otherwise, it's not worth it.
I think I can relate to this as well. And I've been saying it quite a lot as well in terms of optionality makes you a better operator because you're not afraid also to speak to power in the sense of, like, I object, like, this is not a good idea, or like, you can be much more open because you're not constantly fearing for your job. I'm not blaming people for this. Of course, most of us have only one job, right? Like, in air quotes, only one job. But that also puts you into a dependency in the sense that you sometimes don't get to choose what you do. Yeah, it's not a good thing. So I'm all with you in regards to optionality. Now, going to the topic of the podcast. So we did not really define a topic per se, because you and me, we have a lot of the same kind of topics that we talk about. So you send me, or like your assistant sent me, a list of topics that you are passionate about. And I said yes to all of them.
Got to pick now.
So unfortunately, I'm just going to ask you now, like, what is something that's right now on top of your mind that you're quite passionate about? And the interesting thing between you and me is that you're coming from marketing. And you said that you're also in love with MarTech and so forth. I'm not a marketing person, but I started to learn about marketing. So I'm coming more from the product, from the UX perspective. What is right now on top of your mind that you feel like, hey, we need to talk about it?
Yeah, depends how long-term you want to go. I tend to think of like both like long-term, short-term, long-term outcomes. Long-term, there's a real question about what is the role of the human in the marketing landscape. Where are humans valuable in a way that is resilient over time versus all of the tools and AI, solutions that we have? And I think it is much shallower than one can imagine. And with that, I have an even more long-term question for everyone and for you, Leah. Once we've all automated our outreach, be it by email or phone calls, whatever, right, with really high quality, and your end user and customer can no longer differentiate if it comes from a human being or from an automation, LLM automation, what is going to be their engagement on our marketing, on our copy, on our campaigns, right? A lot of what we leverage today in marketing are core human concepts of reciprocity. You respond because you feel that somebody has spent time, has spent effort in trying to reach out to you, and there must be a good reason for that, right? And the same way that we now ignore all of the snail mail, all of the the leaflets that you get at home, right? Because you don't care, you have no emotions for that. Very quickly, our audience or future customers or prospects are going to have no emotions at all for all of the outreach and the direct response we're trying to do for them. It is no longer going to work. So, as always, we, by adding new tools, are actively destroying the campaigns that are working right now. But for the first time, there's no plan B. There's nothing else beyond that. Right? People are going to be inundated with high quality copy. And so, to summarize, what happens when people no longer read emails? I don't know. Yes, what's on top of my mind, not what I have a good answer for.
No, I'm with you as well. So I think there's two things to this. So the first one is, not only will it change how we interact with marketing, but also with product, in the sense of we will have AI that is largely circumventing using an interface in a classical sense. So I can already use products without using them myself. So I can use an AI to interact with it and get some kind of value out. That's going to be much more pronounced. I think what you were talking about on the second point is, at least in my mind, I think we're far away from this. We're still far away for one very specific reason. And that is that even if AI in its technology would be going completely off the rails, which I don't believe it will, by the way, but like, let's say it goes completely off the rails, it's becoming super sentient in a sense of like, like it has perfect overview and so forth. It can only have overview of what it knows. And data being fed to it can only go so far. So there's a lot of stuff happening when we talk about business and people specifically that is not digitized, that is out of reach for AI to even learn about. So what I mean with this, and this is maybe the first question that I have with you, which is sort of midterm to long term. We've been now in this entire thing for like 2 years when we talk about AI or like our job security and like how our jobs are changing and so forth. And there is a stark difference between the stuff that is really cool to look at and funny to use and the things that are actually starting to happen. So I'll give you a good example for sales, for instance. Let's just take a function that is not present in the call. BDR automation is right now happening. It has always happened, right? So like, trying to automate outbound, try to generate demand and so forth. What do you see today, right now, that you feel like is actually working in marketing right now already? It doesn't mean that marketing is dead, but like what is being used in a day-to-day business versus what is hype? And what do you think are the next things that are really going to affect us from the demand side? And then they're also probably going to sift into a product.
I have a lot of things to say here. And first, I'm going to make a bet because I'm a betting man. I'm betting you that in the next 18 months, the number of new sales hires in the US drops in half, if not more. Especially in the SDR, BDR function, it's going to drop by more than 80%. And that creates a good question, like how do you get salespeople if they can no longer go through the training school of SDR and BDR? That's one thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is what is might not be obvious on my LinkedIn page or in my career, but is defining moment. I worked in IT security for 2 years. I was the marketing director for a security consulting firm in France for 2 years, working on phishing, scamming, social engineering. On the good side, guys, obviously, right? But we learned a lot. And I'm sure you, maybe Leah, but everyone in the audience knows of one older parent, one senior person, or not so senior, that got successfully scammed, phished, social engineered by email. Okay? And those are very basic emails. Those are not great emails. Okay? The quality of what we can do right now in terms of output, social engineering, vastly, outperforms those former campaigns. And so that is what's going to happen. We don't need to have a sentient, fantastic AI. With the current tools, we have what's necessary to convince people of what we're telling them. That could be for good purposes, like what I think I'm doing, selling B2B SaaS tools, or it could be for nefarious purposes, right? Unfortunately, because the costs to reward of being a bad actor is higher than being a good actor, right? There's a real question of what's going to happen to the email channel and communication channels.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do agree with that.
To close the loop on the sales teams, there are some jobs to be done, to speak in product language, within sales, which will remain. Okay. For now, closing will stay within the human grasp. People mostly want to talk to a human to pay and gain trust, be able to ask questions. And I say for now, because there are some people who are working on platforms that use chatbots, LM chatbots for sure, but chatbots to close customers. Now you might think, gee, this is crazy. Who wants to pay a SaaS tool on a chatbot? I'll answer that very quickly because I was at segment. Engineers. Do you think engineers prefer to be on a sales call with a salesperson or with a technical chatbot? You know the answer, right? You absolutely know the answer. And so it's going to start there, and then it's going to propagate from there. The other thing on that topic that's interesting, some people, this creates a fantastic opportunity for some product builders to build things that go counter-cyclical to that. One of those is getnoble.com, I believe, where what they're doing is that they're saying, hey, if you can no longer trust a random person to actually be a person and to be telling what they think they should tell, who else would you trust? Trust is important. And so what they're building is it's a little widget that sits on your website where it scans your LinkedIn connections. It scans the customers of the platform, and it tells you, hey, Leah, you want to use Drift. G works at Drift, or G also is a customer of Drift. How about you ask him? And Leah's going to say, oh, yeah, I know G. Like, G's a friend. I trust G. Great. Let's click here and email G. Okay? And so leveraging the fact that trust will be extremely valuable And that's the only thing that's going to remain.
So I would like to make a counterpoint. So on one dimension, I do agree. Trust has always been the driving factor of making any decision in all of our lives. Nobody wants to get scammed and nobody wants to buy something that they do not need, of course, right? So like there's always some kind of trust segment there that's going on. And I also agree with you that it's going to get much, 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 much worse before it gets better. Specifically on the topic of elderly people who are getting scammed out of stuff, we can start to automate this stuff. Unfortunately, I also agree with you that the bad actors will absolutely have a field time with this. But as with everything, this is a temporary thing, unfortunately, where it gets really, really bad. And then we try to find some kind of solution. I don't know how we're going to do this, but something will come up, because if the damages are starting to get so high, we're going to do something about it. This has always been the case.
I love your belief in humanity and your optimism. That's why I am more French than you are.
No. So, well, okay. I also have French genes in me, unfortunately. So that means I also have a very dystopian outlook on the future. No, but here's the thing. So first of all, there's a world outside of tech that exists as well, right? Like, and those are the ones that are always the most vulnerable. And those are the ones that will suffer for the longest because they're not aware of any of this kind of stuff. But anyways, I'm confident that we do find some solution to curb it at least a little bit. This will never go away. Like these elderly scams will also never really completely subside and so forth. However, there's a difference between scamming someone and trying to sell a solution. And the difference is that marketing, so to speak, is in a scam the entire value chain. I just need to convince someone to give me money because then I don't have to deliver anything afterwards, right? Like that's the scam. Like I get your money and then I don't have to do anything. On the product side, just really quickly, on the product side, I actually do think because of everything that you described, which I am in agreement with, because of everything that you described, product-led growth will have a field day because people know and learn that they cannot trust anything that anyone tells them unless it is at a face-to-face meeting or with an experience of a product that they just had that does not ask a lot of money from them upfront.
Yeah, so this is a great point. And I agree that there are multifaceted answers to the problem that is going to happen. PLG is one of those answers for PLG products. Unfortunately, not the products are PLG compatible. Some are enterprise only. Those will find other ways, right, to succeed and to create trust. There's one thing I want to double click on. When you say that basically marketing and what we do is basically legal, is what you said, because we are in the end delivering a product and not entirely scamming people. I want to say this is not a Boolean answer. This is a spectrum, all right? And the reason why that is important is, especially in the marketing growth hacking versus product building, right, world, and often where the opposition comes from, also with sales, is about incentives. Marketing generally has an incentive to overpromise. Okay, because that is what brings the people in, and that is what they're measured on, and that is how their personal incentives work. The more you overpromise, the higher the conversion will be. Now, obviously, the reality doesn't change, so you're just pushing the conversion issue down the funnel into product or into sales or into CS, all right, eventually. And so that's why you start seeing some people who come in companies, some companies that are having a bad time pushing the envelope of what the reality is. And that's what gets super interesting. I'll give you an example that I lived. When I was at Segment, I and everybody else out there in this market tends to say for technical products, start streaming your data in 2 clicks. It's not true. You've never set up Segment in 2 clicks. Like it's absolutely impossible. You're not doing that. Now, realistically, is it simple? Yes. Is it better than the other tools out there? Yes. Is it a real product that drives value? Yes. It is not 2 clicks, right? And so we all do that. We all oversimplify. And that's why you have this like drop off just post sign up that happens when people land in the product because they have this blank page problem. They have this setup friction problem and they just realize that it's a ton of work and it just clicks at that moment, right? It's not phishing. It's not scamming, but it's definitely a spectrum.
So I agree again, but I do think something else is at play here as well. So we have developed a culture of language where we say something but imply something else, and people are starting to kind of imply something. Let's give you a good example on this. So for instance, if my mother asks me whether the food is good, I'm never going to say it's bad, right? I'm just going to say like, it's a little bit, like a little bit like this, a little bit like that. So there's also something happening in terms of like the translation of the audience with the people and so forth. So all of this is kind of fair.
Yeah.
But I wanted to double click on one kind of specific moment that you said, because I agree with you as well. And I would like to hear how you are solving this. So the way that I think about marketing is exactly in the way that you said. It's steered by incentives. So is product and so is sales.
Yeah.
We have a problem with sales for the longest time where we say like, hey, close as much money as you can. What does that do? They close as much money as they can. They also to the detriment of the customer. That's natural. In marketing, we have the same problem at some point. Bring me as much traffic as you can. Yeah. Now, we try to also say like, try to bring me some qualified traffic. So what is qualified traffic? So my kind of idea is this, and I would like to hear how you're trying to steer this. So let's say you're coming into a company. The way that I'm thinking about it is that I say, I would like to incentivize marketing and also reward them monetarily, if necessary, if they bring me a specific amount of qualified ICPs who are reaching the aha moment that we have to find with product beforehand inside of the product that is highly correlative with showing a buyer's intent. So AKA they are going to go and then spend money with us over a specific amount of time because further you cannot go. It's just not possible also for marketing. So how do you do this?
Couple of things. First, on the incentives, on sales incentives, that has largely been solved in sales with clawbacks. These days, most sales organizations have a clawback system where if the customer churns in the 2-3 months after the deal was closed won, then the commission is clawbacked. I want to say there's some organizations that are doing it the other way that is very interesting, including, unless I'm mistaken, Zendesk, where they do not pay out commissions or count customers as customers until they've reached the CS check marks of successful customer. All right. And that's fascinating. Right? It is not counted in the revenue in the AR. It's not going to come in the books. It's exceptional revenue. It's kind of like POC until they are successful. At what point salespeople get paid, handover is completed, customers happy. And that is, I want to say, pretty much ideal.
Disagree, but go on. I will say something to it afterwards because clawbacks are not the correct solution on this. But go ahead.
Okay, great. On marketing, I think it depends on the kind of business. You're right that nobody looks at traffic these days, especially for B2B SaaS. We're all looking for some more down funnel metric. In B2B SaaS, really, I'm always advocating, I'm always pushing for, at the minimum, SQL pipeline in logos, generally SQL pipeline in dollars. And if we can, actually some closed won revenue, right? Because the cycles are fairly long in B2B at places like Gorgias and others that have or Ramp that have very strong data culture, we've implemented a system which forecasts the revenue of each new user throughout the funnel. As they progress through the path of the funnel, the conversion, the forecasted revenue increases, right? And we use that as the incentive measurement for the success of marketing. Okay. And just think about it. If you have a lead score, like in a B2B organization, you're scoring leads based on the firmographics, what's going on. And you say, hey, I know the ACV of the account based on the company size. Just multiply one by the other. You have your forecasted revenue, right? You just sum that across all of the pipe and that's it. You know what the actual revenue ARR will be 30, 60, 90 days from now. Okay. That is the metric you should be using. The last thing I want to say on this, which is we used to do exactly that. We used to look at all of the things we were able to generate, have a lever on, do a forecasted revenue per logo, per user, per sign up, measure that and say, hey, we're on track, we're not on track, we're doing well, not well, as a measure of success. We've tend to somewhat flip that, especially in B2B SaaS. There's a big difference that most people don't realize between the B2B and the B2C. And it's not just the fact that there are teams or the contract value. It's the fact that in most B2B organizations, the total market is constrained. It is not unlimited, and you know the market. There's a finite number of businesses you can sell to, and that's it. I'll take the example of Gorgias. Gorgias is a help desk for e-commerce companies. Their ICP is any e-commerce store, mostly in US and Europe, doing above $1 million in sales per year. Okay? How many are those? 250,000 max. Okay? So that's it. They know every single one of those stores. They've bought the data, they've scraped all of that, they've mapped every person at each of those companies. Okay. And so instead of trying to say, like, hey, who's coming in this month through the channels? How are we doing? You could flip the model on its head entirely and say, of the addressable market, what percentage of the market did we touch this month? What's our penetration? Is our penetration growing faster or not? Who are we not touching in the market? And we can drive goals based on market penetration. You know the total revenue you can drive through the entire market. And that makes it very interesting, like very different. Because instead of being passive and observing at the end of the month, you can be proactive.
So this is a very good point as well. And just to conclude on this as well, I think if you have such a good tracking, so you have a setup, like you said, we know who we could acquire in the future. We also have a good tracking in general, so we know who's coming to us and so forth.
Yeah.
Another way of really thinking about this is that specifically on content marketing as well, I really like this, is where you just say, like, we also define goals based on whether the stuff has been consumed by the target segment. And consumed means not just visits or opens of the email, but like something a little bit deeper in the funnel. So as an example for the product people who are in the call right now, if your content piece would be an interactive demo, so the stuff that you're producing so people can see a representation of your product, that means we're not tracking how many people are looking at the demo, but we are tracking how many of those people that you've reached out have reached a specific point inside of the demo or spent a specific time in it in some kind of way. Because, opens, open rates, and so forth, they're way too top of funnel to me in many, many aspects.
So just to go like one level deeper, it means that what you're measuring is engagement of your market with all of your properties, all of your content, right? Those be marketing or product or sales, it doesn't really matter. Okay. What you can do is now you consider your total market. Let's just say for the sake of argument, there's like 100,000 companies. Okay. What you should be looking at is what percentage of that market is potentially interested in switching to any solution, yours and the others. Okay. And what percentage of that do you capture? Because realistically, creating demand is very hard in B2B. Capturing demand is much easier. When you think of like doing Google Ads, you're capturing demand. Even when you're doing outbound email, really the responses mostly come from people that have this top of mind, this problem top of mind, or that considering it, which is why we're doing a lot of intent-driven outbound these days, what we call warm outbound with like job changes and fundraisers and like company growth and something like that. Okay. And so, for example, when I was at Drift, chatbot platform, competed with Intercom, because those exist on the website, we could measure what percentage of the total market was switching to us, to Intercom, or to somebody else on a monthly basis. And we had that as goals. What percentage of the market that is switching are we seeing month to month? That is our job as marketers, making sure that 100% of the companies consider us. Now, we might win, we might not win. That is a sales problem. It's a marketing problem. It's also a product problem. But if they don't see us, it's a marketing problem.
No, I agree. So let's make this entire problem a little bit more complicated, because I know that you also have it in your description that you are also talking about long cycle activation. So I just want to give some context on this, and then you can tell me whether you have something to say on it. So most of the product managers that I know are working in some kind of hybrid motion where there is sales present and also some kind of PLG motion and so forth, but some of them also work in like enterprise only deals. Whatever the reason is, it usually means in B2B, if you're talking to, I don't know, ACVs above 10,000, like this is your main customers, your cycle times, so the amount of time it takes for someone to activate, recognize your product and then actually close with you, is becoming multiple months, if not sometimes a year or more. Yeah. So in my mind, this is usually a question of, it's not just like marketing and then product and then sales problem, right? Like sometimes we have marketing, then a little bit of product, then marketing again, then a little bit of product, then nothing. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly the customer is closing. Yeah. So how do you think about this if we're going away from this traditional model of, you're sending an email and then hopefully someone is responding to it and then we close them? So how do you think different when the customers just take a very long time to kind of activate, which usually also means that your product is more complex than whatever you can summarize in one sentence?
When you say that you have a customer that is taking a long time to close, you got to think of what do I mean by that? Does it mean that the sales process takes a while because they are engaged with the sales team and just going through like all the hoops and loops of like the demos, the discoveries, finding out, the budget, the buyer and all that takes a while and getting them to say yes? Or are you saying that between the time they consider the solution and they engage with us, it takes a while? Those are two very different things, okay? The consideration these days is really nebulous. Companies, especially larger companies, are always considering stuff all the time. If they read a blog post, are they considering your tool? Debatable, all right? If they check an ad, a landing page, and they leave, are they considering it? Also very debatable. And so you gotta these days, you got to aggregate multiple intent and multiple events on the customer side for multiple potential buyers, people, humans, right, at that company to be able to confidently say, yes, absolutely. At this point in time, they are interested and they are considering, and we should start the clock. Okay. Otherwise, your cycles are infinite, right? There are tools I have considered for years I have never bought because I've had other things or I've had other competing priorities, right? So, and I've not seriously been engaged. I have never wanted to take a call. Okay. And that happens for everyone. So that's one thing. The second thing is when I said is multiple buyers, multiple intent, great data. You need to focus on having some form of a CDP or customer data platform, okay, which generally these days sits before your CRM, okay? So system of record where you're going to have all of the companies that exist in your market, if possible. Otherwise, all those that are engaged with all of the contacts, all of the engagement, the product engagement goes in there, okay? So all of the touches from your PLG, from your self-serve, from the quasi-product your teams have built, like the calculators, the lists, the Airtables you've put out, right? So that you can build this confidence.
Let me ask you a very specific question on this. Would you consider HubSpot, for instance, to be such a tool, or is HubSpot a sales tool? Because in my mind, it's a company tool, because I'm trying to hack HubSpot for doing quite a lot of things also from the product side. And I'll tell you why in a second, but I would like to hear from you. I'm not sure whether you work also with HubSpot.
Yeah, I've used HubSpot. I haven't advised HubSpot. HubSpot is a great company and nowadays a fantastic tool. I wouldn't advise you start dropping all the product engagement in HubSpot. The system isn't built for that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you're not going to be able to really do that. Also, building aggregations across people within an account object is going to be gnarly. It's not meant for that. So in that context, it's mostly a sales tool and a marketing engagement tool. It's not a data science platform, is what I'd say.
So I agree with this to some degree. What I do try to do is I try to generate some insights in more data-driven tools, exactly in the way that you said, product engagement and so forth, the typical tools like, I don't know, Looker, Tableau, Amplitude, whatever, what have you, right? Like these are products. But the issue that I have with a lot of product managers or product executives as well is that they think they need to somehow facilitate sales and marketing to get access to these tools. And that is the wrong way of thinking, I think, because even if I give access to you as a marketer, to my product engagement data and so forth, and let's say we have a great BI tool, you may be even able to do something with it. You're lacking so much context because you're not the one that is building the product, that I do think in good companies nowadays, what we should use these tools for is to generate insights, mark accounts that are worthwhile to do something with. For instance, this account is about to churn based on a scoring model that we have developed. So we think they're going to churn in the next 6 months if nobody's doing something about it. And then send this to HubSpot with a mark, so with a flag. I do everything with flags, so right? So I start to mark them in HubSpot and I say, hey guys, we just sent you 30 accounts. Please take the phone into the hand. They're not interested in the details. All they're interested is if they call these 30 companies, is the conversion rate meaningful? Because then the insights have worked and something is happening. That's how I think about it.
You were doing so well on this train of thought until you got to the part where you expected humans to do the thing. This was just perfect. I was going to agree on everything. But if you've aggregated the data, run the forecast, the model, predicted that this account needs to be touched because there's a risk of churn or there's an opportunity to upgrade, whatever, right? You've done all of this work. Why hand over to a human, which is a risk of failure at this point? Just automate the touch.
Well, to this point, in a lot of companies at scale, so many things are going wrong constantly that I'm not trusting to automate it. But like, it doesn't matter whether it's automated or whether it's a salesperson, whatever you're going to do with it, right? But like, my point is this: let's find some middle ground. If you cannot automate it, the next best thing that you can do is to give it a human into the hands that also has incentives which are aligned. And to this particular point, this is why I said clawback clauses, they're good, but they're not the perfect solution, because there is still this human element of salespeople starting to promise things that you do not have in the product.
So we agree, the human is the problem. I agree with that.
I agree with you, but AI is also not faultless because the data is sometimes wrong.
Oh, totally. But here's the thing. What I'm seeing in organizations these days is more and more, whether it's because you're using Gong that is like coaching your salespeople and telling them what to do. Like Gong's ultimate goal is to like be the puppet master of puppet AEs that parrot what they're supposed to say on calls, right? That's the goal. Okay, totally. We're doing the same thing in like emails and outreach where like the ops team is building, basically whole templates of fantastic copy that the SDR are just supposed to press on. Like, what's the real value of the human being here? Now, if there's a case to be made for enterprise where the risks outweigh the benefits, absolutely. For the vast majority of the businesses which focus on like SMB and mid-market, like the added value of the human in the chain is not high.
I will humor you. I will give you an example because I am a CPO in such a company.
I'm listening, human.
I'm listening. Okay, so the human CPO is going to tell you something now. So I do have, in fact, a list of customers who we believe to be at risk for specific engagement metrics. So let's say you have a magic wand. And just to give you some context, what we are is we are a Shopify-like system. So we are Shopify for photographers who are enabling these photographers. So, they get their own kind of outlet where they can sell their photography and then it's connected to labs, blah, blah, blah. So in your ideal world, what do you automate about this? What this is going to feel for the customer? I don't know why, but I see that their engagement is going down. So what are we automating on this side? Now I'm very interested.
So at the core, I am a growth hacker and I live somewhere in the middle ground of good and bad morals. All right.
Okay.
And one of my most debatable winning strategies was very close to that. When I was working at mention.com, we saw also that some people were no longer engaging in the product and we forecasted they were going to churn. And at first we started doing email engagement to tell them, hey, like you have this ongoing account, come back and like re-engage and use the product which we were paying. What happened? Churn increased. We were reminding people that they were paying for something, right? What did we do? Well, we tested. What if the people for which the credit card expiry date was further out than the contract renewal date, we actually stopped all product emails, all email communication from the company. What happens? Well, churn goes down. They forget about it because they're already paying for the past 6 months without using it.
Spoken like a true marketer. That's not what I'm going at. Okay, so I will specify. The list that I have right now, I have a very high suspicion. I don't know, but I have a high suspicion that they're very unhappy with us because of things that happened in a very specific market a couple of months ago and so forth. And I'm not talking about just like the reason why I'm leading you into this trap is I do believe that speaking to a human actually shows them that we do care because, right?
So obviously, and when you think of reciprocity, if people are convinced that another human being cares about them, their business, their problems, does that make them feel better? Yes, 100%. All right. I agree with that. Humans are humans and they like being considered by other humans. It is what it is. All right. I can disagree with it, but I put myself outside of the human realm, but it is what it is. Now, for how long is the question we had in the intro. How long is that magic touch that you have of leveraging humans to make them feel like they care, like you care, work? I always use this example, like, check this out for a second. This is the proof of reciprocity. You have a home somewhere in the world here. In that home, you have a mailbox. In that mailbox, you receive mostly leaflets, marketing leaflets, which you take as a pile and you trash them without any feeling, remorse, thinking, right? It just goes there, right? That's your life. You just take them, you trash them. You don't care, okay? That's how we all operate. Now, on top of that pile, today, there is a little envelope which has your name scribbled on it, obviously by a human hand, and somebody licked a stamp and put it on the envelope, right? And there's their name written on the return address in the back. How likely are you, Leah, to take this envelope and trash it with the rest without opening it?
Yeah, well, that's happening already.
No, I'm asking, how likely are you to trash it?
No, of course I'm going to open it. But look, this has been happening for 10 years already.
But that's just the proof of reciprocity, because there's a risk that somebody human wrote to you and you cannot afford the negative consequence of ignoring that. Reciprocity, you would feel bad about it, terribly bad. That is the same lever you are leveraging when you're sending them, you're using it as you're a human. That's very important to understand. You're using the reciprocity lever, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to scale that while keeping the benefit, but reducing the cost. What I do in terms of growth marketing, and what we all do with all those tools and platforms, we're trying to keep the benefit, the proceeds of hey, there's a human that cares about you. We spent so much time thinking about you, Leah, looking at your website and your business, when in reality, no.
It is about finding the correct middle way. And I'm going to name a brand now, very specifically, of a company that I think has perfected bad word of mouth, and they're suffering from it because they're doing exactly what you have been talking about, well, in some kind of ways at least. So there are a lot of charity organizations who have been doing this for 10, 15 years. They try to fake email and so forth. So this is coming in. And there's a very specific company that is doing also some stuff that is very, to your point, they have the wrong incentives in their growth metrics. They just are so annoying to get away from. And that is HelloFresh. I'm just going to say this now here on the podcast. I'm not sure that they have changed anything about this. I have stopped using this product 2 years ago. I was very neutral about it, but now I'm actually actively recommending against them because they were so aggressive in trying to re-engage me all the time and also being over the top of how much they care with me. I said, please stop sending me print. Please stop sending this. Please stop. I actually engaged with them and said, please stop, right? I don't want to talk to you anymore. There is a thing as bad word of mouth. And I do think that we are going to get inoculated on this as well in some kind of regards. Big brands, and this is if you believe that brands is still be important in the future for SaaS businesses, which I think it is because you constantly renew, right? It does matter what people think about you. If brand is important in the future and people absolutely hate trying to be circumvented about this, then it will not get as bad for the companies who are depending on brand. Case in point, they have already tried this. We have very good spam filters right now. I would say 1 out of 100 emails is relevant for me nowadays. The rest gets filtered automatically.
Great case. I started my career at Apple for 5 years. And what is Apple if not brand? That's what it is. More than product, it is brand. Okay. There's something that I'm observing in the market that is interesting, especially in the world where we live, you and I, and the audience, startup land, where what you're talking about here is negative consequences of going too far. That's what you're talking about. Okay. And so companies, legal teams, and all the offices of the company try to weigh the risk to reward ratio, what are the potential outcomes of doing such a strategy. And generally they're going to advocate against that. However, that is not the case for small startups. That's why you tend to see startups taking more risk because it's existential to them. So what? Somebody's going to sue them? They don't have a brand to waste. There's no brand for now. The incentives are much of potential success are much more appealing, much more real than the downside risk of people being annoyed by the campaign. And that's why you have companies, startups doing a lot of growth marketing, growth hacking, and outbound when they are Series A, Series B. And to bridge to what I do, realistically, I'm very well aware of all of those campaigns. I'm extremely proficient at those campaigns, and I bring the best of those campaigns to late stage companies where I minimize the risk. I try to get all of the proceeds of the very hacky growth with almost zero risk. That is where the real benefit is.
I think it is, and we can be very specific about a certain topic that doesn't get talked about a lot, which is resurrection, right? So like the thing that I just said is like resurrection. So someone that has churn and you try to reactivate them. Normally, and I've worked at huge companies like Small PDF, or probably the entire world has seen the product just once at some point, right? So like for the really, really big companies, what we talk about is, when is it worth it to start trying to reactivate over marketing and the product, doesn't matter, churned customers? And the way that I'm thinking about this is that I'm not against companies trying to do this, but what they do is they just have one list of, oh, everybody has churned, let's hammer them, and then let's see what's coming back. So the unit economics of this does not make any sense. What if you could say that out of 100 that have churned, I know how many of those were voluntary, how many of those were involuntary, and how many of those that were voluntary were actually churning because of a very specific reason. The product was shit, like something was just bad in your product, and now you have actually fixed this. In that case, it can actually make sense to go back and say like, hey, we actually changed this and we would like to give you the opportunity to test it again if you give us a chance. This goes to your point of like having good data. So this is what grinds me so much. I think, so let me just throw now a number. I would say 90% of the businesses, if not 95% of the business, are dropping 100% the ball when it comes to understanding why people churn. And this is, they may be going as far as involuntary and voluntary churn, but if you understand your churn, then you know who can you re-engage, what should you build in your product, and what is working in our pitch. To your point of clawback clauses, what sounds good, but doesn't sound so good once we use it after a year and so forth. This is where they drop the ball. I think in order to get control of a modern product, you need to understand churn. Whatever you're going to do with it afterwards, whether you engage with it or not, churn is essentially understanding long-term value.
To give actionable advice to the audience, there's 2 campaigns that I've run that speak to this and have worked well. Where, again, like this is always gray zone because of what I do and my line of work, but we've impersonated the founder or the product PM post-churn to send an email to the churned customer and say, hey, this is Leah. I know you've churned. This is not to bring you back. Just like, this is my job. Can you just please tell me in one line why you left? And that's it. Do not send a survey or link to click on a form stack, whatever you want. Just like one thing, okay? Now, this is reciprocity. People will understand, like, hey, like Leah's a real human being. Like, she cares about her product and her job, and I left. Like, what does it take to just like answer one thing? Okay. Now, these days with OpenAI, you can very easily like standardize the responses and categorize them into buckets, right? So really, what does it take you to understand? And like, just for context, this has the highest response rate of like all the things I've tried with churn. Okay. This has a response rate in like the 15 to 25%. It's like really good. Okay. That's one thing. The second campaign I've run is, well, okay, churn is churn. But what about trying to understand before they churn? All right. It's even better. All right. And there's this weird disconnect where a lot of companies have the NPS, right? And they have the churn survey, but like they don't connect both together, right? And so a lot of the time what I've done is, and most NPS tools don't allow for that. It's have an NPS platform, which for every score they give you, it follows up immediately with like, why do you give me this score? With a selection. And the marketer in me picked the choices so that I could push the people to believe this was their problem and follow up with an answer that I had. So it's really inception. I'm incepting the categorization into the customer's mind. So they say, oh, I'm leaving because it's too expensive. Great. I follow up with like a coupon code. I'm churning because I got integration issues. Hey, do you want to call with a CS person? All right. Well, I'm just giving this bad score. Right? And for the people who are very happy, would automatically send them swag, ask them to put a review on G2, send them to a referral program. Right? So you got to create that engagement with your users throughout their life, because otherwise, one day they're going to stop using, they've migrated somewhere else, and that's too late. There's nothing you can do about that. That's too late.
No, I'm smiling really stupid because most of my listeners know now what's coming because you mentioned the word NPS. I think the NPS is an absolute shit metric. It's the biggest ruse that marketers have ever fallen prey to because they think that it predicts anything. It's absolutely not predicting churn.
I don't care about the score. I'm using the form to push people to self-identify the problem.
You just saved yourself, because I was about to say the only redeeming quality about the NPS is the freeform text field that you just mentioned, which is absolutely valuable, because I also do this. By the way, this is a great tip for anyone on the call. If you're not doing this, if you're not exporting your one-liners that you have from your customers, feeding it into a language model and just ask it to like, hey, can you see some patterns in this? Can you group this or count the amount of responses from people that are super angry, those that want to murder you, and those that absolutely love you? Then you're really dropping the ball. This is so easy to do.
So now I can share this email tactic I had at Segment in 2016, 2017. One of my trademarks is fake forward emails and fake injections, where we let the customer believe this email has been forwarded. We're just like putting the HTML blocks for that. When somebody gave us a NPS review, I would have a fake bot in the bottom of the email that says, hey, like, Leah gave us a 6 because product integration issues. All right. And then just one, a layer above.
Yeah, I know where this is going.
I would have the like head of product that sends me the emails. Hey, G, this is the customer who gave us a 6. Can you reach out? And I would reach out and I would say, hey, I was talking with like the head of product over coffee this morning about, the NPS, and your name came up, like, can we chat? And this has worked so goddamn well over the years because it looks human. My job is to make those kind of things feel human, look human to other humans.
You're really operating on the twilight of what's morally okay and whatnot. On the twilight. I'm not saying it's immoral, but you're really operating on the twilight. So this is a social media clip in the making. 100%. I like it, I like it, Guillaume.
People always tell me, gee, you've been financially fortunate. And I tell them, you have no idea how much money I would have made if I was on the other side of moral ground. I would have made so much more money with what I know.
No.
I've been conservative here.
Let me ask you a very short question to also conclude on this topic, because I think it's very interesting. So do you have an opinion on when we should ask someone after they have churned? So like, let's say we have a very clear signal. When should we do anything about it? Is it the same second? Is it a day after? Is it an hour after? Is it on a specific signal? When should we do it?
Okay, so it depends if you're trying to like inset the idea that it comes from a human or not. Humans don't react in seconds.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. Well, if you're trying to like the thing that Leah, the product manager, is following up, like, it doesn't make sense. If you're trying to do that, the faker and me would like do it the next morning at 9 a.m. when Leah goes through the churn of the previous day. All right. And I would tell that in the email. If it's automated, I think there are very good products that handle churn flows these days that add friction in the churn flow with discounts to reduce churn. By the way, if you're on the other side like me, you should absolutely 100% try to churn from all the products you're paying, because for like a good chunk of them, you will get an automated discount. All right. So leverage it. Okay. And to answer your question, if it's automated, I would probably do it like within a couple hours while it's still fresh, maybe recoverable, right? Certainly within the first 15 days, because most competing products have a trial. All right. Certainly within that trial period where they've been overpromised by the competing party, they are in this honeymoon period. Eventually, that will disappear as well, and they will realize that grass isn't as green as they thought, and you might be able to win them back. So I think now that I'm talking this, thinking about it, there might be like a sweet spot window of a couple of days where they've tried something else. I'm like, I don't know.
I think normally I would not wait for someone to cancel their subscription to call them to be churned. So my answer is usually like, really think about your churn metric, whether you're not having something that is leading up to a churn where you're so confident that you're absolutely sure that someone is going. So for instance, a very specific example is like they stopped logging into your product and you have such a long subscription cycle that you will notice, right? And it is a product that you use daily normally. So for instance, I don't know, a good one would be a nutrition tracker or something that you have to do daily because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Just be careful that you're not sending any engagement out there for someone that is in holidays. Hey, why did you quit us? It's like this overly attached girlfriend. It's like, hey, something wrong. Can I give you a 50% discount? I'm like, yeah, sure.
I have an interesting one about this. When I was at Drift did a Series B with Sequoia, and the guy who did the deal is Pat Grady, late stage partner at Sequoia. And at one point, he came and he advocated against yearly plans. And we're like, well, that's weird. Like, you're an investor, yearly plans reduce churn. You should love yearly plans. Like, it's a small discount in exchange for like a great churn reduction. Like, what is there not to love in there? And it's like, yeah, from a financial standpoint, you guys are absolutely right. However, by doing that, you're hiding the churn. There are people who are stopping using the product who are still accounted in the books, and you're not fixing the problems. I want you to remove the yearly plan to force you to solve the product problems. Now, did we do that? No, but the argument was really convincing.
I had someone ask me yesterday something similar, like, so, hey, when should we grant rebates in general? Like rebate, a yearly plan is also a rebate in some kind of way, right? Like we're trying to come to, like, it is a rebate. And I'm in general against rebates, with some exception on the really big contracts where, sometimes you are over budget with a client and you actually know that you cannot finish it at all. And if you can give a rebate and you can close them without compromising that you're being turned into an agency, then it can make sense. But by and large, I'm really against this kind of, specifically in B2B, right? Like Black Friday, 40% off, Guillaume, and then you can stay for 5 years for $5. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to work. But I think we're largely aligned. I think I will come to you next time when there's a sequel to Catch Me If You Can, because I feel like you have a lot of stuff to say about this, because you're kind of like, you're really good in kind of imitating what a human looks like. Mm-hmm. And how they speak. So it's going to be very interesting.
I'm the perfect turncoat when the machines come over to take over the world. I'm like, I'm in your camp. Come on, guys.
I will hire you for my marketing department. This sounds really good. Thank you so much for coming to the Product Tea. We had now recorded 1 hour out of awesome. This was really, really cool. I enjoyed this. Guillaume, how should people get in contact with you? Should they get in contact with you? And should an AI BDR contact you? And if so, where?
Yeah, absolutely. I operate out of Hypergrowth Partners. You can find us at hypergrowthpartners.com. Our awesome collective of 30 plus CMOs and VPs who do advisory for mid-stage startups, all in B2B, to solve marketing and growth problems. I'm also active on LinkedIn. And if you are a sentient AI BDR, like, absolutely do reach out. We're going to have a blast.
Okay, that sounds amazing. So if you are an AI, please contact Guillaume, pretend to be human. And yeah.
Or the opposite. If you're a human and you want to talk to me, pretend to be an AI.
Okay, we'll have that as the next topic. Thank you so much for being a guest, and that's the end of this episode. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to The Product Tea with Leah. If you don't have enough yet, you can subscribe to my podcast right now at Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can head to my website, leahtarin.com, which is leahtarin.com, where you can find much more of my material or just want to work with me.